It was a Friday morning, and we were all called into the large conference room on the 12th floor. My name is Derek. I'm 36 years old, and until recently, I was a senior creative executive at a mid-sized advertising agency in Manhattan. I'd been with the firm for nearly 9 years, long enough to watch it transform from a chaotic startup into one of the most talked-about shops in the city. I wasn't just part of that journey, I helped build it. That morning, our managing director stood at the head of the table with a smug smile and said he had exciting leadership news to share. I felt a mix of anxiety and hope. A week earlier, I had pitched a multi-million-dollar campaign for a luxury auto brand, and, according to my team, it was my best work yet. Everyone thought the announcement would be about me. Hell, even I thought it. Effective immediately, he said. Brandon will be leading our automotive accounts as the new group creative director. I remember the sound of polite applause. My ears buzzed. Brandon, my best friend, the guy I shared ideas with over whiskey and late nights, grinned like he'd won the lottery. I caught his eye, but he didn't look back. He just kept smiling at the room like he owned it. I tried to stay composed. I clapped. I nodded. I even managed a tight smile. But inside, my chest burned. Not just from the loss, but from the way it was handled. No warning, no one-on-one conversation, just a public announcement, and I was sidelined. Later that day, I walked past his new office. Our eyes met briefly. He raised his hand in a lazy wave, as if everything between us was fine. I kept walking, and that was the moment I realized something deeper had been going on, something I hadn't seen until it was too late. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every meeting, every late-night brainstorm session I'd ever had with Brandon. We met 6 years ago, when he joined the agency as a junior copywriter. I was already established. 2 promotions in, managing small teams, trusted by the partners. Brandon was ambitious, quick-witted, and he reminded me a little of myself when I first started. I took him under my wing without hesitation, showed him how to navigate egos, how to sell a pitch, how to turn a bad brief into a great idea. We clicked instantly. Over time, our friendship moved beyond the office. We got drinks after work, spent weekends watching Knicks games. I even invited him to Thanksgiving with my family when he had nowhere else to go. I trusted him with everything. I remember once, about a year before the promotion debacle, we were working on a beer brand campaign. It was a mess. The client was impossible. The deadline was brutal. But Brandon and I stayed late for days, eating takeout, cracking jokes and bouncing ideas, until we finally nailed something we were proud of. When we won the account, he turned to me and said, "Couldn't have done it without you, man." And I believed him. So when I thought back to that conference room, how he didn't even flinch, didn't even acknowledge me, I started questioning everything. Had he been playing a long game? Was all that loyalty just a performance? There was one memory that stuck out. A few weeks before the announcement, I caught him in the conference room after hours, tweaking a deck I'd been working on. I assumed he was helping. I didn't think much of it at the time. Now I wasn't so sure. I spent the rest of the weekend thinking through every moment that suddenly felt different in hindsight, and by Monday morning, one thing had shifted inside me. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was suspicious. Monday came, and I walked into the office with a quiet resolve. No more assumptions. I needed clarity, even if it hurt. I started by checking old shared drives, campaign folders, anything that might hold a clue. I wasn't exactly sure what I was looking for. Maybe confirmation, maybe denial. What I found hit harder than I expected. Buried in a presentation folder for the auto campaign, the same one I had spent weeks developing, was a version of the pitch deck I had built from scratch. But this one was altered. My name had been scrubbed from the creative credits. In its place, Brandon's. He'd left all my concepts intact, the structure, the tone, even the mock-ups, but in the version sent to the partners, I no longer existed. My heart dropped. I went further. Email threads from Brandon to upper management, threads I had never been copied on, showed him positioning himself as the sole creator of the campaign. "I've been refining the visuals on my concept," one email read. "Think this one could be a game changer for our automotive clients." My concept, my campaign. And the worst part? The timestamps proved that this was happening while we were still working on it together. While I was sitting beside him, handing him my trust, he was already carving me out of the picture. I sat there at my desk, staring at the screen, hands trembling. It wasn't just betrayal, it was erasure. He didn't just want the credit, he wanted to replace me. I didn't tell anyone. Not that day, not that week. I kept showing up, doing my job, saying the right things, but something in me had changed permanently. I no longer saw Brandon as a friend. He had become something else entirely, and I wasn't going to let him win. The day I resigned, no one saw it coming, not even Brandon. I didn't march into anyone's office or make a scene. I printed out a single-page letter, signed it, and walked it quietly to HR. I thanked them for the opportunity. I smiled. I shook hands. But inside I was done pretending. Brandon found me in the break room that afternoon, pouring what would be my last cup of agency coffee. He leaned against the counter with that same effortless charm he'd always had. "Hey, heard about your decision. Didn't expect it so soon," he said. I looked at him for a moment. I wanted to ask him why. Why take what wasn't his? Why smile to my face while stabbing me in the back? But I didn't. I didn't give him the confrontation he might have been preparing for. "Yeah," I said calmly, "time for something different." He nodded like it made perfect sense. "Well, best of luck, man. You'll land on your feet." That line, so casual, so empty, almost broke me, but I kept my voice steady. I always do. And with that, I walked away. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. I watched the numbers count backwards, each floor taking me further from years of effort, nights spent chasing deadlines, and friendships I once thought were unbreakable. I didn't feel relief. Not yet. I felt grief. That weekend, I packed up the last of my things from the apartment I had shared with my now ex-girlfriend, another casualty of long hours and delayed dreams. I moved into a smaller place in Queens. No art on the walls, no buzz in the phone. Just me, a laptop, and the echo of everything I had built being taken from under me. But sometimes, silence is the best place to rebuild. And though I didn't have a plan yet, I had something else. The quiet fire of knowing exactly who I was dealing with. I gave myself 1 week to sulk, just one. Then I woke up early on a Monday, brewed a bitter cup of coffee in my barely furnished kitchen, and opened a blank document. It was time to start over. No agency, no salary, no safety net. I started small, rebuilt my portfolio piece by piece, stripped out the agency branding, rewrote the case studies, and gave myself the credit I had always earned but never claimed. Every image, every tagline, every campaign, I made sure it was mine, and mine alone. It wasn't easy. Without the agency name behind me, doors didn't open so fast. Clients weren't rushing in. I sent emails, dozens of them, many without replies. I reached out to old contacts, former clients, even freelancers I'd mentored. Some were supportive, some pretended not to know me. The hardest part was swallowing my pride. I'd gone from managing million-dollar budgets and leading creative teams to designing pitch decks on a folding table in my living room. The silence between gigs was deafening. Still, every day I showed up. Every night, I stayed up. And slowly, things began to shift. A small skincare startup hired me for a branding project. Then a local coffee chain asked for help with their new packaging. The checks were modest, but the wins felt monumental. For the first time in years, every decision was mine. No politics, no stolen ideas, just honest work and my own standards. I started building a site. Derek Miles Creative, nothing flashy, just clean, clear, and mine. I updated my LinkedIn, launched a newsletter, and wrote a post thanking the agency for an incredible chapter. I left out the betrayal, let them save face. But one afternoon, while organizing contacts, I came across a name that made me pause. It wasn't just any client. It was the agency's biggest, and I had a direct connection. The name stared back at me from the spreadsheet. Eli Danner. He was the chief marketing officer for the luxury auto brand I had pitched just before I left. Sharp guy, no nonsense. We'd worked closely for weeks, and I always had the sense that he respected me, even if he never said much. He once pulled me aside after a pitch and said, "You've got instinct. Don't let the noise drown it out." At the time, I thought it was just a compliment. Now it felt like a seed he'd planted. I sat there, fingers hovering over the keyboard. I knew this wasn't just another prospect. This was the client, the one Brandon had leveraged to get ahead. The account that had crowned him creative royalty. I opened a new email, typed, deleted, typed again. Eventually, I wrote something simple. Hi, Eli. It's Derek Miles. I was part of the team behind your last campaign pitch. I've started my own creative consultancy and would love to share some fresh ideas I've been developing. No pressure, just thought I'd reach out. I read it 5 times before hitting send. For the next 3 days, I checked my inbox like a teenager waiting for a text. Nothing. Then, on the 4th morning, his reply arrived. Derek, good to hear from you. I remember your work. Let's schedule a call next week. Send over what you've got. I exhaled for the first time in hours. Over the weekend, I pulled together a full creative proposal. I didn't recycle the agency's ideas. I went back to the drawing board, built a new concept from scratch, sleek visuals, bold copy, and a strategy that spoke directly to their brand's core values. It was better than the last one, sharper, more focused, because this time I wasn't designing to impress an agency. I was designing to speak directly to the client. When I finally hit send, I sat back and looked around my tiny apartment. No suits, no boardroom, no backup. Just me, my name, and a shot I wasn't going to waste. The Zoom call was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp. I was up by 6. I put on a collared shirt, fixed my hair, cleared the clutter behind me, and rehearsed my talking points at least 10 times. The morning sun spilled across my desk as I stared into the webcam, trying to look confident, calm, unshaken. Eli joined right on time. Hey, Derek, he said with that same direct tone I remembered. Appreciate you reaching out. Thanks for making the time, I replied. He didn't waste any. Walk me through what you've got. I shared my screen and launched into the pitch. A campaign centered on precision, performance, and legacy. Everything the brand stood for, but with a human touch that had been missing in their recent work. I showed mock-ups, short-form video concepts, and tagline options. Every detail was intentional. Eli nodded slowly as I spoke. He didn't interrupt, didn't smile, just listened, but his eyes didn't leave the screen, not once. When I finished, he sat back and said, "It's clean. It's smart. Better than what we've been getting." I didn't move. He added, "You've got a good eye, Derek, always did. Who's working with you?" "No one," I said. "It's just me right now." He raised an eyebrow. "You put this together solo?" "Every piece." There was a brief pause. Then he said, "Send me a full scope and timeline. I want to see what a small engagement would look like." I nodded, holding my breath. "Not promising anything yet," he added, "but I like what I'm seeing." We wrapped the call 15 minutes later. As the screen went black, I sat there in stunned silence. Not because I had nailed the presentation, I knew I had, but because for the first time in a long while, I felt like myself again. I didn't just belong in the room. I owned it. 2 weeks later, the contract landed in my inbox. It wasn't a trial run. It wasn't a small engagement. It was the full account. Eli's team had reviewed my proposal and decided to move forward, exclusively with me. Just like that, the agency I had left behind was out. I read the email 3 times before it sank in. The brand I helped build, the campaign I had crafted, now fully in my hands, under my own name. I didn't celebrate, not loudly at least. No champagne, no social media posts. I just stood in my living room, phone in hand, and let the silence wrap around me like armor. I knew this was going to shake the agency. They had built an entire division around this client. I didn't know the internal fallout, but I could imagine the emergency meetings, the damage control emails, the fingers being pointed, and I knew one name that would be at the center of it: Brandon. I never reached out, never gloated, never sent a word his way. Instead, I focused on the work. I assembled a small freelance team, designers I trusted, copywriters I respected. I led strategy calls, oversaw creative, met deadlines, and I did it all without the politics, the whispers, the credit thieves. One night, I passed the old agency building on my way to dinner. The lights were on, but the energy felt different. It looked smaller somehow, quieter. I paused across the street, hands in my pockets, watching the glow of the conference room where I used to pitch ideas that someone else would claim. This time, the campaign would launch with my name on it. This time, no one could erase me. And as I stood there in the cold Manhattan air, I realized something I hadn't expected. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt free. It came on a quiet Tuesday morning, buried between a project update and a coffee shop receipt. The subject line read, Thought you'd want to know. It was from Natalie, one of the junior strategists at the agency. We'd worked together on a few campaigns back in the day. She was sharp, honest, and one of the few I'd actually trusted. Her message was short. Brandon's out, official as of yesterday. No statement, just a calendar wipe, and his name gone from the system. They're not saying much internally, but the client drop definitely triggered it. Just thought you should know. I stared at the screen for a long time. There was no satisfaction, no rush of vindication, just a steady, quiet understanding. The game had played out. Actions had consequences, and the silence with which it all ended felt poetic. I didn't respond to Natalie right away. I closed my laptop, stood up, and took a walk through the park near my apartment. The cold air stung, but it felt clean. I thought about Brandon, not the betrayal, not the stolen credit, but the years before all that. The guy I thought I knew, the one I helped, defended, laughed with. He was gone long before the promotion ever came. I stopped at a bench, sat down, and pulled out my phone. I drafted a reply to Natalie. Thanks for the update. Hope things are okay over there. Take care of yourself. I didn't ask for details, didn't dig. I had nothing left to gain from his downfall. Because the truth is, I didn't win by getting him fired. I won by never becoming him. By walking away with my name intact. By doing the work. By choosing to build rather than burn. And maybe most importantly, by knowing that some victories don't need an audience. They just need a clean break. It's been 11 months since that morning in the conference room. I now run a small creative studio out of a converted loft in Brooklyn. We're not flashy, no neon logos or overpriced espresso machines, just a tight team of people who care about the work, and about doing it right. We've picked up clients I never dreamed would take a chance on an agency this small, and every pitch, every design, every strategy session, I'm present. Not just physically, but fully. I know where each idea came from. I know who made it, and no one takes credit for something they didn't earn. I see my name on contracts now, on proposals, on launch decks, and not because I pushed someone else out of the way, but because I stood back up when everything collapsed and built something honest. The money's good, the respect is better, but what matters most is this. I sleep at night. No weight on my chest, no bitterness in my gut, just clarity. Brandon and I haven't spoken since I left the agency. I heard he's freelancing somewhere out west. Maybe he's rebuilding too. Maybe he's learned something, or maybe not. It doesn't matter. This isn't about him anymore. It's about every time I felt like I had to stay silent, just to survive. Every meeting where I bit my tongue. Every time I watch someone else climb higher on my shoulders. I don't bite my tongue now. I speak clearly. I lead with intention. And when younger creatives ask me for advice, I tell them the truth. Protect your ideas. Protect your name. And never confuse quiet with weakness. Because sometimes the strongest move you can make is to walk away and then come back with something no one can take from you.